David Moyes does not like making substitutions. You know it, and I know it. End of story. Fact. You know, like when people type you a message and they type fact in capital letters, means it's a fact, right? Not so much. I thought it was a fact. I thought I was right. I thought my suspicions and my hunches were exactly that. This sort of plays into the narrative, doesn't it, of David Moyes being inflexible and not being particularly tactically adept. So I decided to do some research. And the findings of the said research may well surprise you, because they certainly surprised me. What prompted this research, you may ask? Or you may not ask. But in case you did ask, I'll tell you what prompted this research was some comments that David Moyes made about the 9 substitutions rule, if you remember. But the 9 substitutes on the bench, not 9 substitutions. You might just have 2 teams. Brilliant! Brand new team. Let's do it. If you remember, post-lockdown, clubs were allowed to carry 9 substitutes on their bench. I say bench, not really a bench anymore. It's basically the stadium. There's no one in there. So the bench, they've spread all over the place, these players. So you call, someone gets injured, you call someone down there and up in those heads. Takes them half hour to get down and get an injury running down the steps. But you're allowed 9 people on the bench, from which you could choose 5 who could participate in the game. Well, that was the idea anyway. As it stands at the moment, which is the older rule or more recent rule, which is 7 substitutes on the bench, from which you can choose 3. 3 on, 3 off maximum. Now, it's been rumoured that they may well resume and do the 9 and the 5. David Moyes had something to say about this, and what Moyes has said is he's in favour of it. He wasn't before, but he's in favour of it because of player welfare. When he says player welfare, to stop injuries happening. And of course, any time that I see this, and I'm sure any time you see this, we think, well, David Moyes doesn't use the substitutes he's got anyway. David Moyes has no need for additional substitutes. David Moyes actually says himself that this will benefit the big clubs, and you can understand why he would think that. Why? Because they've got better players to bring on. And then he said something that was really very interesting. He said, I would like to do more substitutions, but the players have got to be good enough and got to be ready. Thought, well, again, I didn't believe it. Well, that's not true, Dave. You just don't like making subs. I'd already made up my mind. I'm working on the confirmation bias here. I'm not believing what he says. I'm just confirming what I think I already know. So I thought, I'll have a look. I will see exactly how many subs he has done in his previous jobs. And I'll go into some detail in a second, but I'll tell you now, he usually does 3. He doesn't usually wait until the 85th minute. David Moyes has a history of making substitutes to impact games. Now, I have not cherry-picked these, by the way, and it's not a case of going through every fixture in depth. Quite frankly, I'm far too lazy to do that. I took his first season at Manchester United and I took his last season at Everton. I think it was a fair crossover, and I'll tell you why I think it's a fair crossover. I believe when David Moyes was manager at Manchester United, he probably felt he had a good squad. Why? Well, because they're Manchester United, they're bound to have good players. If you can bring Valencia off and bring Ryan Giggs on, then that's a good thing. There's clearly players on the bench you'd want to use. I think the Everton example is, again, a good barometer because he'd spent a long time building that squad. That was his squad. So actually, whoever he's taking off one of his signings, he's bringing on one of his signings. He'd been there 10 years, right? Stands to reason. Now, we're going to feed into this and we're going to have a little look at what this means to West Ham and the players on his bench and the players that he wants to feature at West Ham. And I don't think it reflects favourably on some at West Ham in terms of how David Moyes views them. Which, if you remember yesterday when I spoke in the Sebastian Haller video, I think David Moyes says some nice things about Haller, but he just ain't his type of player, and I have a suspicion he ain't going to be around too much longer. So, David Moyes took over at Manchester United in the 13-14 season. Took over from Alex Ferguson. If you remember, they were all champions. They were champions at that point. Went out with a bang, didn't he, Sir Alex? So, if we just go back and look at some of these fixtures here, you'll be quite surprised. And I'm not going to bore you. I'm not going to go through every fixture. I'm really not. I just want to give you a little bit of an overview. So their first game, David Moyes' first game in charge league game, not Community Shield or anything like that, was a 4-1 win against Swansea City. He brought on Wayne Rooney and Anderson. Took off Robin van Persie and Ryan Giggs. Oh, fair enough. Good players. Made 2 substitutions. The first one was in the 61st minute, by the way. Next, he played Chelsea. They had a 0-0 draw. He made another 2 substitutions. Took off Antonio Valencia and Danny Welbeck and brought on Ryan Giggs and Ashley Young. First one of those was in the 66th minute. Clearly trying to impact the game. The next one was a 1-0 loss to Liverpool. 3 substitutions from David Moyes. He brought off... Who did he bring off? Phil Jones, can't blame him there. After 38 minutes, that's a very un-Moyes thing to do. I can only assume he was injured. Ryan Giggs, and he brought off Ashley Young. He brought on Antonio Valencia, Xavier Hernandez, and Nani. Not his nan. There was a player called Nani. David Moyes didn't bring on Nanny Moyes, because that would have been... She's not very mobile, Nanny Moyes, unfortunately. Oh, Grandma Moyes. What else we got? Crystal Palace. Beat Crystal Palace 2-0. 3 substitutions. Fellaini, Januzaj, Hernandez. 62nd minute. 66th minute. 78th minute. He's not hanging around. And basically, let's have a little look here. Let's just click back a little bit. I'll do one more of these. Next one was Manchester City. Let's have a little look here. They lost 4-1 to Manchester City. No wonder he got the boot. He's made 2 subs there. So, and actually he's done one of them, Tom Cleverley, on the 50th minute. Okay, now let's just see. You might think that's just because he was at Man United. Let's look at Everton. Just quickly, I know it's boring when you just list things, but you get a similar tale at Everton. Everton's first game so this is the 12 and 13 season. Actually, their first game was against Manchester United. Funny enough, Everton won 1-0. Probably played a massive part in him getting a job. He made 3 substitutions. He took off Osman, Fellaini, Jelavic, and he brought on Heitinger, Coleman, and Stephen Naismith. Late substitutions, to be fair, for that one. But then we go to the next game, was 3-1 against Aston Villa. It's Everton. Everton beat Aston Villa 3-1. He's taken off Darren Gibson, Jelavic, Stephen Naismith, and he's brought on Heitinger, Coleman, Morales. 64 minutes, 71 minutes, 87 minutes. This goes on. I'll only read one more. As I say, I wasn't going to send you all to sleep. 2 substitutions, Victor Anachabi, Stephen Naismith, Jelavic, Morales. First substitution was on 44 minutes. The other game was against West Bromwich Albion. He made another 3 substitutions. It's clear. David Moyes makes either 2 or 3 substitutions a game. Why doesn't he do that at West Ham? He doesn't do it at West Ham because he doesn't like the players. It's the only reasoning I can think of. I don't think he's probably changed his philosophy at all. I just think he's looking on the bench and thinking, I don't fancy any of these players. I think there are some, and if you look at the West Ham squad, I think he would look at Issa Diop and he'd think, I like Diop, but he's not going to change a centre-half. You're not going to change a centre-half in the middle of a game, not if you spent all week working on drills and set plays and positioning, offside trap. Why would you change a head centre-half? You're not going to do it. Probably the same goes for your full-backs, your wing-backs, whatever you want to call them. Highly unlikely to, unless something absolutely horrendous is happening. So what are you going to change? What are the positions? And I look at this, by the way, at David Moyes. By and large, apart from that Phil Jones injury, David Moyes, by and large, is changing midfielders, wingers and forwards. That's what he does. There's very, very little example of him doing anything else. So when he's doing that, what are his options at West Ham? Well, I think they're quite telling because it says and it tells the story that he doesn't really fancy anyone. Is he keen to bring on anyone to replace Declan Rice or Soma Soucek? No, there's nobody there. I think he's looking across the bench. He's thinking, I don't fancy this mop. No good at all. Don't fancy him at all. And what about on the wing? What's he looking at there? Well, I actually think it's quite damning because he seems totally and utterly reluctant to bring Andrei Yarmolenko on. There's no doubt about that at all. If he does come on, it's very late in the game. He tries to shoehorn him in several different positions. I think he quite likes him. I think Yarmolenko, the 25-year-old version of Yarmolenko, would have got into David Moyes' team, would have got into David Moyes' Everton team. I really do. But when I was looking down the list of players that he quite likes, I was looking at Giggs. I mean, everyone likes Giggs, but you look at Kevin Morales, and I was looking at a Stephen Pienaar and a lot of these players here, and I was thinking, well, hold on, he seems to be featuring those. He seems to have his favourites, but he's not afraid to take them off the pitch and replace them with somebody else. Clearly, if he feels the person coming on is of sufficient quality. Before I go on, and before I go just to the rest of the team there, I did it yesterday, I'm going to do it again today. I would like to point you in the direction of our Patreon. Yesterday I spoke about Tier 1, this is Tier 2. Tier 2 is $5, $5 US. Why is it US dollars? It's a US website. This is all about our podcast, about getting our content as a podcast. Costs you £5 a month. You get all match previews, all match reviews as a podcast. You get a cup of tea with Gio and Gonzo as a podcast. You get at least 2 videos as podcasts every week, and you get early access to podcasts whenever we do them. It's basically, what it does, if you want to listen in the car, you don't want to constantly watch us on YouTube, for $5, you basically get Hammers Chat, loads of Hammers Chat each week as a podcast. The link is in the description below. Check it out. We've got 4 different tiers. We'll be covering one in the next, so we've got, well done, one today, one tomorrow, and one the day after. We'll cover them all. Please do check it out. Check out Hammers Chat's Patreon page. Thank you very much indeed. Just going back to what I was saying about the team and the players, I think it also plays into Sebastian Haller. Because I just don't think he's up to the job of what David Moyes sees him doing. We spoke about Josh King. There's no need to say it all again. We know what we think about Mikel Antonio. We know that David Moyes likes him. I just don't think he looks on the bench and sees anybody that he's going to come on and do a job. So I think, looking at it, would David Moyes like to make more substitutions? I'm pretty sure he would. We have a manager of a massive body of evidence, by the way. Every game I clicked on, he's making substitutions. Every single one. He's not going to change the habits of a lifetime just because he's had a change of philosophy and things change at West Ham. He doesn't like the players. And do you remember, what was it, last week I did a video and it was very much about which players David Moyes considers his. And I said he doesn't have to have signed them. I said he would consider Ogbonna to be his player. Likes him. Obviously used him in the first stint as well. The same with Crespo. There are some that are there, whether he signed them or whether he didn't, who he considers to be his players. Bowen, his player. Obviously, bought him. Souček, his player. But Rice would consider him to be his player. Of course, gave him his chance early doors as well when he was there in his first stint. Mikel Antonio, there are some, we covered it. But I don't feel he looks at the bench and thinks that A, there's people that necessarily he signed, or B, that they're people that are in the Moyesy style, the Moisty style, right? Certainly no Nanny Moyes on the bench, is there? And it does make me wonder a little bit about 2 players in particular. Number 1, Fornals. So I think he's taken to Fornals for his work rate. And as much as Fornals gets criticised a lot, has he already got a couple of assists this season? I think he's got a couple of assists and he's got a goal. All right. It's not Cristiano Ronaldo, all right? That much is clear in any way, shape or form. But he's got someone who works really hard, who can get some assists and get the odd goal. That's probably going to do for David Moyes at the moment. Do I believe once David Moyes has made all his signings that Pablo Fornals would be his ideal player? No. I actually do think that Fornals would go to the bench. But I think at that point, David Moyes would be looking on the bench and seeing Fornals thinking, here's someone I trust. Here's someone I can back. I'm going to bring him on the pitch. So that's firstly what I think about him. The second one, and the interesting one, actually there's 3. Before I get to the second one, the interesting one, we'll go to the third one and less interesting one, which is the dynamic of Manuel Lanzini. He clearly made his mind up after the first stint. I actually thought that winner, when I felt like a winner, didn't it? That goal against Tottenham, the equaliser, the humdinger, goal of the month, by the way, that one now. I thought that would have swayed him. I thought that would have had David Moyes thinking, there's my boy, my old Lanzini, me and him. There you go, he's back in the team. Lanzini is back. I think it's clear that David Moyes doesn't feel Lanzini is back. So, I mean, that's quite interesting, that dynamic. So you can fall out of favour with David Moyes and find it quite hard to get back, even though he'll say very nice things about him. But he says nice things about everyone. He says nice things about Haller. He says nice things about Mark Noble. You're not seeing him in the team. The other one I find interesting is Said Benrahma. And we're not going to know. I said I'm not going to overreact. I said this before. I said I don't expect to see him against Man City. I don't expect to see him against Liverpool. And I said that. I will start to think, hold on, there's something going on here if we do not see him against Fulham. I don't mean to start, but if we see him as an 88th minute substitute against Fulham, I'll think, hold on, there is something going on here. Because I have no doubt, had he bought Josh King would have been playing. Sebastian Haller wouldn't. The suggestion is, the rumour is that he didn't want Benrahma, that he wanted Josh King. Now, we don't know. Now, David Moyes has since come out and said, no, I want him. I wanted this player. Well, I'd expect David Moyes to. That's what he does. He doesn't come out and say this player's useless, get rid of him. He says nice things about the players. But I do think it'll be quite telling, and actions speak louder than words. It'll be really, really interesting to see if he features, and it just plays into the substitutes. Because from everything I've just mentioned, you can tell that David Moyes, go and look at the stats yourself, don't take my word for it. What is this website, by the way? Worldfootball.net. Worldfootball.net. It seems to have the archive of every match, every goal from forevermore. And you can see he was substituted in that. Go and have a look for yourselves. And you'll... Actually, you don't have to. I'll take my word for it, quite frankly. There's probably better things that you can do with your time. What's that thing on telly at the moment? Sisters, it's called. Very good. Creepy. On ITV. Bit odd. Don't know what's going on with it. Anyway, but if you don't fancy watching Netflix or watching telly, and you do fancy looking at lists, then go and have a look for yourself. But you'll quickly come to the conclusion that if David Moyes has players, he'll sub them on. And the fact he's not doing it at the moment means he doesn't like the players that he's got. Which makes me feel that we're a long way away from seeing the finished product and the finished team from David Moyes. I think prepare for more of an overhaul. If he signs a new deal, David Moyes stays around for another 2 years. He continues to want to make his team. And whether they're loan signings or whatever they are, do expect the composition of that bench to change drastically, because I just don't think, defenders aside, he really fancies anyone that's on it. But I do feel the real interesting story in this, we'll start at Fulham, will be quite telling, is exactly what happens with Said Benrahma.